Welcome back to the show, Disruptors. This is the Point of Impact podcast, and as always, I'm your host, Aaron Hale. What can I say about the interview you're about to hear? But wow, just wow. My guest came up from humble beginnings and has been called a real-life Wizard of Oz. He's been and is a concierge to the rich and powerful. He's a best-selling author, brand consultant, business coach, and host of Steve's Speakeasy, which was nothing like I thought it was, but much, much more. Steve Sims is the guy who makes things happen. Whatever your deepest desire, your biggest dream, he's the guy you call and make it a reality. Whether that's having a private dinner in front of the statue of David, serenaded by Andrea Bocelli, or playing in concert with Journey, or having a guided tour of SpaceX with none other than Elon Musk himself. Steve's the one who can make it happen. And while he's making others' dreams come true, he was also having conversations with his clients, with his dream personalities. He was asking the right questions. And often he would ask them, what sets them apart? What makes them so successful and so many are not? And what he found was a few common threads. We discussed that and much, much more. But before we get into it, I would like to ask you for a quick favor. Fulfill one of my dreams and give the show a 5-star rating and a glowing review. And please, if you find any value whatsoever in this show, share it with somebody else who you think would appreciate it. It goes a long way in getting the word out and making an impact in your community. With that, I thank you. And without further ado, my guest, Steve Sims. All right. Steve, thank you so much for joining me on the Point of Impact podcast. This is an absolute honor. I'm so excited to get started and have this conversation with you. I've read Bluefishing, and I'm also enjoying right now your second book, which I love both of the origins of the titles, but Go for Stupid. That's a great title. And so one of the questions I want to ask you, because you actually mentioned this in your first book, the etymology of stupid or stupidity. And then you explain your philosophy a whole lot more in your second book. But before we get into that, I'm really first, let's just start with welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I did want to start with a little background for the audience, because you really do have a fascinating story, a fascinating career path, and really do want to start with what was your family's. I don't think it was a chosen career path, but the family business. And there was a scene from, and you outlined it perfectly in the first book, the scene where you were on a ladder and you had a perfect metaphor for your path in life, just looking up and down that ladder. And can you tell me a little bit about the background, what I'm alluding to? And I'll shut
Absolutely.
up.
I know the story. I know the story well, because it was one of my many pivotal moments, like all entrepreneurs have. I left school at the age of 15 with quite simply no possibilities. My career officer in the school literally said, "Don't even apply for college. You won't get in." So no one had much faith in me, and I ended up working on my dad's construction firm, which was basically anyone in the family worked for this firm. My mum worked in the tea hut, my cousins, my uncles. And there was one day that I climbed up this ladder on this building site, and I was delivering a big pile of bricks on what they called a hod that would sit on your shoulder. I'm sure health and safety wouldn't allow that now, but back then, anything went. So I've climbed up this ladder. I've got this stack of bricks on my shoulder, and I get to the top, and I look down the line of scaffolding. The first person down this scaffolding was my dad. The next one was my uncle. Then his sons, my cousin, both that were older than me. One of them was like 19, the other one was 20-something, and very, very vocal on letting everyone know that he wasn't a teenager. And then next to them, my granddad. Now, I looked down this line, and I saw every generation of my upcoming life on this scaffolding. And it shocked me, it stunned me, And my dad yelled at me to put the bricks down. I was literally dumbfounded. And then at tea break time, this was in London, we had this old caravan with the wheels pulled off. We'd all dive in there and drink a cup of tea to warm ourselves up on a wet day before we went back on the building site. And as I went into the caravan, my granddad, because he was one of the oldest people there, he was like in his late 70s, early 80s, around that period, they had allowed him to sit closest to the little fire pit, which was also a health hazard, but the little fire pit to warm up. And I squeezed through all of these other wet construction workers that were there with different teams to my granddad, knelt down in front of my granddad because there was nowhere to sit. And I was busting with curiosity. And I remember saying to him, Granddad, did you think you would be doing this when you were this old? Now, that was a remarkably rude, direct, and insulting question to ask a man that, let's be honest, didn't have any other options. Now, he didn't even look at me. Just blew into his cup of tea. And he went, son, if you don't quit today, you'll be me tomorrow. And that was it. And I came out of the tea hut, and I went running up to my dad. And I went, Dad, I got to quit. I just ran in there. I saw Granddad, and we said, if you don't quit today, you'll be me. I got to quit. Now, this is one of those other pivotal moments. My dad is about 5'5". I am 6 foot. My granddad was like 7'2". He was a monster of a man. I don't know how the hell my dad lost out, but I was smack in the middle of 6 feet. And my dad, literally, when my granddad walked up to you or when he shook your hand, it was like a massive, great monster, shaking your... I forget what the guy... There's something the giant, the famous actor, it was like his hand. But also, he was so large that it almost cast a shadow over you whenever he was behind you. And my dad was talking to me about me quitting. Granddad walked behind me. My dad looked at me, physically had to look up to look at my granddad behind me. He nodded to my granddad, and then he looked back at me with a little smirk and said, right, you finish at the end of the week. So they obviously had, recognized something. The downside is my granddad died shortly after that. And so he never got to see what I became. And I swear he's up at this bar, probably causing shit, big Irish lad. And he's probably got the old fashions waiting for me for when I'm up there so I can start telling him my stories.
So to tell you what, that's definitely, it's definitely a great, a great reason for you to get out of the business when, the two patriarchs are telling you you need to change course. And you did, in fact, you quit. And you just went looking for anything you possibly could find, any other job whatsoever, right? And you tried all sorts of things. Working at a bank,
Yes.
Which good on you, just getting hired from the construction site to the bank. But then you started finding a little bit of your own character, a little bit of maybe sorting out the course you would set when you became a doorman, a bouncer for a bar, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is actually where you first developed the password system and becoming selective in what you call cultivating the crowd. And it was a form of scarcity. Please tell the audience a little bit about where the term bluefish came from.
Wow. So I had no idea what I was doing once I left that building site. I just knew that I was poor and I didn't like it. Now, I use the word poor and it can upset and insult a lot of people, but I was poor completely. I was poor because I had no mentor. I was poor because I had no direction. I was poor because I was lack of education. I was poor because I had no support, challenge, or money. So on any of the identifiers, I was on my ass. And I was, I'm a big lad. I'm 6 foot, 240 pound, a biker ugly. I wasn't built for a sophisticated career hobnobbing around with wealthy individuals. But I had this curiosity, and curiosity will conquer anything, okay? There's always this line that went, curiosity killed the cat. They never finish the rest of the sentence, which is, but he died satisfied. And so I always wanted to find out what could go on. Now, we're talking about the 80s and 90s. I didn't have YouTube to download mentors. I didn't have podcasts. I didn't have audiobooks. I didn't have these things. I was just curious. So I thought to myself, if I want to understand money, I've got to get a job where money's the main currency. Yacht charters, jet charters, working in a bank, as you mentioned. And I got fired from everything. And I got this job working for this bank. They transferred me to Hong Kong because that's where the job was. And I lasted 1 day before getting fired. Now, entrepreneurs, we're kind of a bit different. We get smacked in the face, and all that does is teach us that our guard wasn't good enough. We learn by bad experiences. So I thought to myself, I'm in Hong Kong now. I've got a return ticket. I could go back to being a bricklayer, and everyone would be like, oh, well, what were you thinking, Steve? Know your place. You're a bricklayer. Calm down. Or I could take what was given to me in the form of me being fired. I'm now in a country where not only do I have any friends, I also don't have any shackles. I can try anything now. And if I still fail, at least I tried. So I went out to try and surround myself with rich people. Again, I failed. I ended up becoming a doorman of a nightclub because I needed the money. But again, entrepreneurs see opportunity. And I got an MBA. I got a degree in human psychology. I got to see the people that pretended they were rich versus the people that were rich, how they interacted with each other, how they recognized each other. And it was very, very comical to be able to see it and learn. And of course, I'm working with 2 other meatheads, and their job was to make sure they didn't get too much blood on the shirt and go home with a different girl each night. My job was to watch this club and to identify affluence and then see how I could get into that conversation. And in the early stages, because I'm a doorman, I knew where all the nightclubs were. So I knew where all the new restaurants were, the new bars, the new openings, the new premise. So I would literally speak to these affluent people and go, oh, you go to the new nightclub, it opens up next Thursday. And they're like, oh, we don't know how to get in. I went, let me see what I can do. And I ended up getting them into it because I knew the doorman on it. I would charge them money, but I would also give them a password. So when they turned up, the other doorman would know that they came from me. And I would say to the other doorman, and I didn't know this was going to work. This was just something I thought was a bit humorous, a little identifier, a little bit of branding, make them say a password. But something happened. Ego doesn't allow for too much playfulness. So when these people would turn up, if they were a bit ego-y, And the guy would be, have you got anything to say to me? If they didn't say what the password is, he wouldn't let them in. And so it became a filter for people that were very comfortable in themselves to come up with this password. We hadn't realized it, but it was a natural filter to get rid of the egos. And of course, as the parties got bigger and bigger and bigger, without realizing it, I was getting famous for using these passwords. And one of the things I used to do, as I continue to do it, was I used to give him like a poem or a limerick, and I'd say to him, finish this sentence, 1 fish, 2 fish. And so people would walk up to me and they'd go, red fish, blue fish. And it was the classic Dr. Seuss. But that last word, bluefish, for some reason is stuck in people's head. And people would literally come up to me going, hey, you're that bluefish guy, aren't you? And I had no idea I had no idea what they were talking about until my secretary one day turned around and she said, you know they're talking about you. Because I would turn people away. I'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about, mate. And I would send them away. And it was my secretary that turned around and she went, that's you. They call you the bluefish guy here. So, we ended up using it. We named the company Bluefish. And we went from getting people in the bars, movie premieres, fashion weeks. And then we left, the Asias and got into like sending people to Formula One in Monaco, Polo in Stade, the award shows in Hollywood, MTV, Kentucky Derby, Polo, all the major events, and New York Fashion Week. And we grew what ended up becoming the largest experiential concierge for millionaires and billionaires in the planet. And I was living in Geneva. I then moved over to Palm Beach, and I now live here in Los Angeles. Sold the concierge firm, but now what I do is I teach, I train, and I speak all over the planet on how to be able to do the incredible, the insane. Never the impossible, but always the incredible.
And that was, for one, though, one of those stories from your books, or actually, I think you mentioned it in both, was the dinner right at the foot of the David statue in Florence, not the replica in the piazza, but the one right in the Accademia. And I love that story because, of course, in 2017, I took my wife to Florence for our honeymoon.
Right.
And I wish I had your cell phone number and maybe another zero or two on the honeymoon budget. But we had a fantastic time. Maybe not Andrea Bocelli serenading us at, in front of David. But
well, you've just teased it. People will have to buy the book to read the story about that now. Yeah, but it was quite an experience.
Yeah, actually, the funniest experience, or the best, one of the most memorable experiences for us there was me just trying to remember the Italian that I'd learned when I was stationed there many years before, while also being deaf and not being able to hear their response. But
that would have been fun to see and hear.
Well, I would speak to them in Italian. Surprisingly enough, they would speak back to me in Italian. No, I'm sorry, I'm deaf. Tell my wife, and they would speak to her in Italian. I'm like, no, she doesn't know in Italian. Tell her in English. She'll tell me in English, and I'll respond back to you in Italian. And silence as I could tell they're both just like looking at me like I'm an idiot. And then then they would just speak to each other in English. No, the lingo. I parlo la lingo. Anyways. There was something you mentioned in there about curiosity, and I know you've had Stephen Cutler on your podcast, and the art of the author of The Art of Impossible and The Rise of Superman, and he talks about this creativity spark, and of course it all starts with being curious, being open to possibilities. And that's a common theme in your books, and how your rise to success came is that you just weren't afraid to ask, and you were asking the right questions of the right people. And there was one, I believe this is from Bluefishing, And it was your philosophy or your practice of asking why 3 times. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, or tell my audience, why do you ask why 3 times?
So you've dropped a lot in there in that question. So let's break it down into the 3 chunks. The first thing is, everybody that is successful, one of the common traits and threads that they all have is that curiosity to not settle for what they've been offered. Why does it have to be this way? Why can't it be better? Why can't it be cheaper? Why can't it be faster? If you look at, say, Elon Musk with PayPal, he couldn't understand why a bank took 5 days to wire money from one US bank account to another, when quite simply it was just a series of digits in what was basically an electronic email. So he invented PayPal. And bingo, what do we have now? We have Zelle and Venmo, because the banks have had to catch up with PayPal. So that's curiosity. So I've always tried to remain curious. How can I do something better? How can I do it bigger? How can I make it better? Curiosity will be the deciding difference between you and your competitor. So that's the first thing. Be curious. Secondly, you mentioned that I ask the right question to the right people. I do, but I'm only able to do that because I quite often ask the wrong question to the wrong people. And so when you ask wrong questions, people look at you funny, they don't give you a good answer, and you learn, you go, hang on a minute, I didn't get the answer I wanted. So in order to get a good answer, you need to ask, and this is a J. Abraham quote, in order to get a good answer, you need to ask a good question. So I started focusing on my questioning skills. And that got me the answers I needed. And then finally, I realized something else that was happening that was a combination. And so you've asked a beautiful question. It was the combination of that curiosity and the ability to ask a intrusive, inquisitive question. So someone would say to me, hey, I want to do this. Now, if I said, certainly, let me do it, then that's just a transaction. It's like walking up to McDonald's to go and cheeseburger. There you go, bye. No one has a relationship with McDonald's. No one has a relationship with the biggest transactional platform on the planet, Amazon. You order your coffee, you order your toilet rolls, that's it. You don't have a relationship with them. So I wanted to be able to delve into relationships because, quite simply, I'm in the people business. And now most people are in some way. So relationships are the currency and the equity you want to survive today. So what I would do is someone would say to me, hey, I want to do this. And I'll give you an example of a rock band request. I had a client contact me. He's an NBC commentator. He's very famous. I wouldn't mention his name, because I don't mention clients' names, but he talks about it all the time. And he contacted me and he said, hey, I want to meet the rock band Journey. I want to go backstage and I want to meet them. And I went, oh, that's fantastic. That's great. Why? And then I shut up. Now, why is an incredibly aggressive question. Some people will get very offended by it, and that'll be the end of the conversation. Some people will turn around and go, well, okay, let me explain. And they'll explain, which means they need to open up about the purpose and the reason for that request. So the guy turned around to me and went, well, I've known the group for many years, and there's a few things that, they've done to my life. And every time that there's been an up and down in my life, I've played that music. So it's been the theme tune. And I went, tell me more. So again, I pushed again. I always say, ask why 3 times. Most of the time, you never get past the second. You don't have to. You've got all the information you need. But keep going until you get to the core of the direction. So this guy turned around and eventually did open up. And he went, right, when I was at college and I was trying to make money, I was the lead singer of a Journey cover band. And I used to sleep on my mate's couch. Now, fast forward now, I'm the head of an NBC commentating team on finances. I don't have to sleep on anybody's couch anymore. But through my life, I've got divorced, I've had sickness, I've had illness, I've been rich, I've lost the money, I've made more money, I've lost it again, I've been sued, I've done well. It's been an up and down all the way through my life. And every time there's been a peak and a trough, I've actually put on Journey, and it's brought me back to a positive mindset, which has got me out of that. He said, this band has created the theme tune of what would be my movie. I want to meet them and say thank you. So I said to him, if this was your movie, what a shitty crescendo that would be. That at the end of the movie, you were waiting there backstage as they came up, all hot and sweaty, shook your hand, took a picture, and had forgotten your name before they got to the changing room. What a crap ending that would be. Let me see what I can do about it. So what we did is, with this movie idea in our head, and what would be the great finale from them just playing out of his radio and him impersonating them on stage, we actually got Journey to approve it, and they brought him up on stage, and he sang 4 tunes as the shortest-termed lead singer of the rock band Journey in San Diego. He actually performed with the full band. That's how the end of the movie should be. And we only got there because we had the grit, we had the ingredients we needed, because we dared to ask why. If we'd have accepted his first request, we'd have got him backstage, he'd have got his photograph, he'd have done his handshake, and that would have been it. But no, this guy performed on stage.
In keeping in with the asking questions, and you are a master of asking these questions. In fact, you did your own survey of the successful people, your clients, went back and asked them more questions. You asked the gatekeepers to these, the backstage passes and the closed doors. You asked them, why did you let me do this? And their answer was, because you asked. And
yeah.
But when you went back and you asked all of these successful millionaires and billionaires, you said it was asking the right question. You started off with, why are you rich and I'm not?
So again, go back to my visual. If anyone's listening to this podcast, I'm not a pretty little fella. So, I'm tattooed, pierced. I'm a 240-pound biker. I don't have a car. I have a collection of motorcycles, and pretty much every day you're going to find me rolling around the hills on a bike. When I was younger, I was also a big lad, had a motorbike, but I wasn't very, shall we say, polished. So what would happen is I would see a guy, and this happened in a car park. The first one was scary. This guy turned up in a new car. Now, in England, when you've got a new car, the first letter on the license plate dictates that it's a brand new year. Could have been last year's model, but if you registered it that year, then you get a new license plate. So having a new license plate in the first 3 months of when they're released was a big deal every year. And this guy pulled up at the pub with his brand new car, with his brand new license plate. I don't even remember what the car was. It was some kind of sporty car. Now, I was just about to get on my motorcycle, and I had a couple of beers in me, and I saw this guy get out of the car with his girlfriend, and I thought, this guy's wearing a nice suit, he's got a brand new car, he's got a gorgeous girl there. That's the life I want. So my 2 boys were waiting to get on their motorcycles, so I just came at this guy in my leather jacket with my crash helmet in my hand, and I was pointing at him going, hey, how come you're rich and I'm not? He got in the car and drove off. And I was like, oh, well, he didn't want to talk to me. And I turned around to my friends, and my friends was like, who would talk to you? Why do you think in any way that was going to get a conversation? And I realized the question wasn't, let's be serious. The question wasn't perfect, okay? The delivery was awful. The presentation, i.e. me, was terrifying. So I went, yeah, but I stood with it. And I would meet people in the future and I'd be like, hey, I'd like to ask you a question. Yeah, and my first question was always, how come you're rich and so many other people are not? Now, by putting it that way, they felt as though they were doing a service, not just to me, but to other people, okay? So it broadened the appeal. But then the danger was, if you imagine when you were young, how did you signify being rich? It was purely a number in your bank account, wasn't it? You know? If I said to you, hey, I want to be rich when I'm older, you're not thinking of family and home, you're thinking of $1 million in your bank account. So when I would ask people, how come you're rich? It would almost be asking them about their finances. And they didn't want to explain it to me. So then I would say to them, well, okay, wrong question. Let's tweak it again. And I would say to them, how come you're wealthy and I'm not? And that was my next edit of my questions. And I got a better answer, but then I got people saying, well, I found my church and I married my wife and I got 3 beautiful kids. And I'd be thinking, well, I'm not going to go to your church and marry your wife, so that doesn't help me. So then I changed it and I said, how come you're successful and so many people are not? Now, success is mindset, it's tactics, it's belief, it's commitment, it's standards. So now I'm getting the holy grail of information from powerful people. Now, the beautiful thing about it is, like your language example when you were in Italy, okay? If someone tells you what to do, all you've got to do is do it. If someone says these are the 3 things you've got to concentrate on about your business, this is how you look at firing and hiring people. This is how you brand yourself on the internet. This is how you learn to speak. This is how you learn to communicate. All of those things are not costing you anything more than effort. So as I would get off the chair, get off the conversation, wherever I was, whether I'll be in an airplane, in a party, and I was getting this information, I'd be 2 foot taller walking away. And so I suddenly got the holy grail of questions. And I've been able to ask that question to Elton John, Elon Musk, Sir Richard Branson, some of the most powerful people on the planet, and far more affluent billionaires you've never heard of in countries you didn't know existed, that have been able to answer me those questions. And it all comes down to the same things: standards, time management, how you value relationships, the value of the relationship versus the value of your bank account. And I've been able to impart that on clients that I actually coach now and on stages where I speak. So to ask a good question, you probably got to ask a bad one first until you learn to get the question that provides you the answer that benefits you.
Well, you already, you mentioned 2 of them already in our conversation. You got it distilled it down to those 3 answers. Well, there were quite a few other answers, and they might have been, hedge funds or money or whatnot. But the 3 most common answers were, cultivate your circle, right? Relationship management, and then the one was the curiosity, right? Being open to opportunity and always asking those questions. And then that 3rd one was guard your most precious and most precious resource, and time management. So you've found you've got the ear of all of these successful people. You've built this incredible concierge service, but you didn't stop there. You had this wealth of information, and it seems like it was though you had the secrets right? Secrets to the Wealthy. So you've written a couple books. You have your own podcast. You're now coaching, and I love the idea of this speakeasy. Can you tell us? It brings it all together from the Bluefish passwords and what. I did want to mention, because I thought that was hilarious in the book, where going back to the passwords and telling people to come back tomorrow and tell me one of the names of the Teletubbies. So these people who are dressed to the nines and probably fairly affluent, because of course you're cultivating having to say Tinky Winky before.
It was hilarious.
And what happened was you actually elevated the mood of the entire room before they even entered. And I thought that was outstanding. But tell me about the speakeasy, because it isn't a pub. It isn't.
No.
Tell me about that.
No, it's not. It's so this actually got created about 5 years ago. And we do 3 a year. And to be honest with you, I didn't think we'd ever do more than one, because I wanted to check. I wanted to reverse engineer something. When I want something to happen, I would provide a lot of information, a lot of reason, a lot of benefit, a lot of value, a lot of info. And I was now starting to speak on all of these stages. And these people that were turning up in the audience knew I was going to be there. They knew what time it was going to start. They knew what hotel it was going to be in. They knew what time the tea breaks were, the lunch breaks, they knew everything. I thought to myself, would you come to my event just because I'm there? Would you trust me to look after you for 2 days? And that was it. So my first ones were like, hey, and I did it in San Diego, spend 2 days with me, $2,000. And people were like, where's it going to be? San Diego. Where exactly? Somewhere in San Diego. Who's going to be there? People. What will I learn? Stuff. And that was it. It was just, I wanted to be as complacent and as almost cocky as possible, so I wouldn't answer any of the questions. And I was charging $2,000. Well, let's be serious. It's quite a bit of money for an event. Okay? So, and it's just $2,000. There's no VIP. There's no cheap seats. It's $2,000. You'll find out about it at simspeakeasy.com. But, you'll find nothing about it when you go there, so I should warn you there. But what I did was I literally said, come to the mastermind that you know nothing about, hosted by me. Pay here. And that was it. That was my original advert. And it's still now, the only thing I don't have in my advertising now is hosted by me. I think it says, come to the greatest mastermind you know nothing about. Pay here. So, but I host all of them. So people started signing up. And the first person that signed up was actually a very good friend of mine. So I phoned him up, and I won't give his name, but I was like, dude, you've just paid to come to my event that you know nothing about. And he was like, yeah. And I said to him, what's wrong with you? And I was being sarcastic. I was trying to be playful, and I was trying to go, are you crazy? Are you mad? But the mind hears what it wants sold. And he turned around, and when I asked him that question, what's wrong with you? His mind read it as, what's the problem? And he went, great question, Steve. I'm having trouble with the scalability of my business, and I need to be looking at how to operate it. And he gave me what his problem was. And I thought, so I took all these notes down, and we had about 6 people sign up, and I went through every single one of them. And of course, by the end of it, my question became a little bit smoother, but it was a case of, hey, I believe you signed up for this. Congratulations. But I've got to ask you this question. You signed up for an event that you know nothing about. What is the problem or bottleneck in your life or business today that you're hoping this event can solve? And then they would tell me what that problem was. And here's the dumb thing. If you get 100 entrepreneurs in a room and you ask them what that problem is, it's usually the same 5. How to get more affluent clientele, how to spend less money on advertising, how to stand out from all the others, how to brand, how to market, how to communicate, how to build relationships. All the same stuff. And so what I started doing was I would then look in my phone at the people that are at the top of the game in this. So I had people going, oh, I'm very busy at the moment, and, you know, I'm forgetting stuff. How do I learn to concentrate? I brought in a Le Mans winning racing driver to talk about how to concentrate under pressure. I brought a Navy SEAL in, and you'd have respected this one. He was the current head of the Navy SEAL Team 6, came into our San Diego, and we all had to put our phones and any kind of recording devices in a bag because we couldn't report who it was that we were seeing. We've never been able to mention his name. And you know what a coup that is to get him to come in and speak to our crowd. And he came in and talked to us about the OODA loop. And I'm sure the OODA loop's very familiar with you. So we have these kind of people come in. We had Jim Quick, who's probably one of the greatest mind teachers out there, came in. We had Jeffrey Madoff come in, who does all of the advertising for Victoria's Secrets and Ralph Lauren, talking about how to get a story over in 30 seconds. We had the head designer for Pixar talking about how to build a trailer. Movies aren't sold unless they've got a good trailer. So he was talking about how to seduce, again, in 30 seconds of videos. So we've had Gary V's personal photographer in. We've had so many people that have come in, Jay Abraham, Harvey, myself. But here's the thing. Nobody knows who's coming. But as soon as I know what your problem is, I bring someone in to solve it. And we only allow 40 people to turn up. And none of that information, I've given you way too much, none of that information is on the website. It literally says, greatest mastermind. It's called the Speakeasy. We move them around America. The next one's in New Orleans in November. And we just go, Speakeasy, New Orleans, greatest mastermind you know nothing about, pay here. And that's it. And they always sell out.
You know, that's exactly why I had to ask. Because I did my research. I went online and I'm like, oh, I like Speakeasies. Wait, this is not. First, I know it's not what I thought it was. Second, it has no information whatsoever.
Not at all.
But I am happy to hear that it's just down the road from me here in the Florida Panhandle. So I might have to make a trip over.
Oh, boy, you got to come over and experience it for yourself. I will tell it. Let's be serious. We're in New Orleans, so you know full well there's got to be some Sazeracs involved.
Mm-hmm.
You know, has to be.
That would be fantastic. Speaking of California, though, you're in Los Angeles, a bike aficionado. My dad also is in California, is in Laguna Beach, and loves to ride. I'm not sure what got it into him, but he traded in his chopper for a Ducati a few years back.
Okay.
I don't know. But, don't tell him I told you and the rest of the world, but I think there's also a Vespa in his garage.
What year?
I think that's just for touring around Laguna Beach.
Oh, is it?
But
I'm actually, so here's the funny thing. I'm really, really good at buying motorcycles and I'm terrible at selling them. I've got about 13. And I've got a few Harleys. I've got a few Ducatis, Nortons, Triumphs, Aprilias. And one of the bikes that I still haven't been able to purchase is a 67 to 69 pearl white Vespa. And I want, because it's the most classic, beautiful bike in the planet. So I will one day have a Vespa, and I may stick it next to my Harleys just for contrast. An old Vespa next to the big gruff Harleys.
it is a bit of an icon, isn't it?
It's
Classic like a KitchenAid mixer.
Yeah, I think a Vespa, along with the Gucci loafer, is in pretty much most of the modern museums and modern art museums through the planet. In Milan, London, and New York, I know it's in there. So it is just an iconic design.
Yeah, absolutely right. So that was one thing I learned on your website, because when it comes to the coaching program, right at the top of the page, it says, "What's your problem?" So, when you turn this bluefishing and you turn your philosophies into a coaching program, the first thing you ask every client is, "What's your problem?" Uh, when it comes to the speakeasies, these masterminds, you say it has the problems are actually pretty common. What's the coaching program involved, and what do you teach? How do you tell me a little bit more about that?
So everyone's different while holding the same problem. So you may be talking to someone who's in real estate. You may be talking to someone who is a coach. You may be talking to someone that's in finance, in business, whatever. They may be in a different sandpit, but the problems are usually the same: getting the clients, getting the brand, getting out there. And near the latter part of my career within my concierge firm, I was dealing with some of the largest brands in the planet. I've worked with Asprey, Ferrari, Tiffany, Piaget. I worked with major brands, Elton John's Oscar Party, and I've got used to how to market and brand and stand out and communicate. Well, I can take all of that 25-year knowledge, and when the book came out, the first one, Bluefishing, people would say, "Hey, can you coach me?" And of course, when they would ask me that, I never started a coaching program. So what would be my first question? Well, what's your problem? What needs to be solved? And I would find that out. So as it grew, we only take on 15 clients at any one time. But we actually started asking people what that problem is. And then again, my power, my benefit, my uniqueness is my Rolodex. I know powerful people. I know the people that do all the social marketing and media for the Kardashians. You want your Instagram profile to boost? I know that standard of person. You want to be able to speak on worldwide stages? I know that person. You want to write a best-selling book? I know that person. So what I do is I've got the knowledge that can help you get to a certain level. And then when we need to bring in the big guns with a phone call, I can bring them into the conversation to help you get to the next level. So my whole point of coaching is to get in a room with people that really are aggravated enough to do something about their future and quite simply cut down the years. Now, we can all make money. We can all get an increase on our credit card and spend more money. We can all get a loan, but you can't get more time. So if what I can coach you on can save you mistakes for the next 2 to 5 years and get you ahead of that curve, that's why people pay me, and that's why people have me as their coach.
Wow. I could always use some more time. And I think we all could. But
it's the thing that we can't buy. And a lot of people just wasted 2.5 years of it through COVID.
I think it does. It comes back to the creativity, asking the right questions and being resourceful with what you do have. That was one of the major reasons, I was successful after my injury. I was a bomb technician in Afghanistan. And we weren't, we couldn't just say, I think this is too hard. I don't have the right tool. I can't do the job. There's things being hard were never a good reason for mission failure. So, depending on, no matter what tools we have, we still have to have our creativity, our wits about us, and we have to be resourceful. And I think that is completely in line with how you've run your life. Resourcefulness, asking the right questions, being curious, and just finding the right team, the right people around you, cultivating them, bringing them up. I think it's impressive, it's commendable, and I'm actually in awe of where you brought yourself from bricklayer to this person has got the finger on the pulse of the world's most rich and powerful. It's pretty amazing.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. That's very warming for you to say. Thank you.
If you would have one piece of advice that you would tell just anybody, especially, of course, listeners and what viewers of my audience here, what would you tell them?
So my dad, my little 5'5" Irish fella, he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed by any means. But one day we were walking through London and he was a chain smoker, and you can't overemphasize this. He would be smoking one cigarette, and in the other hand, there'd be a cigarette there waiting for when this one ran out so he could go again. He was a pack a day on a slow day. That was him. And one day we're walking through London, and I don't smoke. I hated him. Maybe that was because of why I hated him. But one day he put his hand on my shoulder as we're walking through London, didn't stop, didn't look at me, just put his hand on my shoulder, and he went, "Son, always remember this. No one ever drowned by falling in the water. They drowned by staying there." And then he took his hand off my shoulder and carried on walking. I was about 16, 17 years old at the time, and I stopped. And I was like, where the hell did that come from? And I was literally looking around to see if he'd seen it on the side of a bus or something, because I was like, that was so out of character. But for some reason, about 10 years later, it came back to me, and I think it's even in one of the books. And it's always reminded me that every time I fall over, and I fall over a lot, you're either winning or you're learning. And I like progression. I always like to test myself, whether it's racing the motorcycle around a racetrack or working on new marketing techniques and tactics. Some of them win, some of them fail. The ones that fail give me lessons and become the winners. So I constantly have realized that it's my decision. If I fall over and get my face wet, it's my decision whether or not I stay there, drown, and wallow in a pity party, or get up and gain from it and grow from it. So that's probably the single piece of advice I'd give.
There is so much information in failure. If we're just open and willing to learn from it. What do you think was going through his mind? Did he tell you?
No, never did. Never did. And I actually brought it up to him and he didn't even remember saying it. It was just like the craziest thing. And of course, I didn't bring it up until like 5 or 6 years later. And I'd be like, do you know, something came back to me was when he was like, no, I don't remember that. And I was like, but you remember the building site we were on? And he was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. We were walking between there, and he was like, no, I don't remember that. He had no recollection of it whatsoever. And I've actually, the funny thing is, where is it? I even turned it into cups and a T-shirt. And when I was at one of the speakeasies, I gave it away as cups and T-shirts once because it just always stuck with me.
It's funny. One of the things that sticks most in my head from my dad, talking to me, I was maybe 12 or 13 or something, and obviously not real ambitious. And I just remember being in the car with my dad, and he had absolutely no recollection of this whatsoever either. He says, son, do you know what lethargy means? Nah. You want to learn? Nah. That would be that would actually become pretty what's the word? Yeah, predictive of what was to come. But he definitely saw the lack of a spark in me for a little while until I found a different way. But again, no recollection. He's like, no, I never said that. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I could probably bend your ear for a whole lot longer. But I know that I respect your time as well as our listeners. And if they did want to find out more about your coaching, about your books, about contacting you, about I don't know, getting married by the Pope, or finding your next speakeasy, how can my audience do so?
It's very easy. whether it's on social, whether it's on websites, wherever it is, just type in Steve D. Sims, D for dashing, 1M in Sims, Steve D. Sims, anywhere. I'm at stevedsims.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, everywhere as Steve D. Sims. So I'm very easy to find. I've made it that easy. Steve D, D for dashing, and 1M in Sims. Steve D. Sims.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve. This has been fantastic.
Thanks, pal. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.